Welcome back to DFS or Busts. I am Trevor Anthony Pitzel, and by the looks of it, man, this thing is a huge success. I think we had about 3 viewers, so thank you to the 3 of you. I love it. Hey, we're going to start small, just like my bank, and then we're going to rise up, and we're going to make this thing happen. So once again, if you missed the first video, basically, this is my journey. You are following me in my attempt to become a full-time daily fantasy sports player where I will concentrate on football and golf. So the first episode was just an introduction. Now, this is more of what we'll do on a weekly basis. I'm going to kind of show you my strategy, show you some of my picks. I'm not saying that I'm like this expert and that you should follow my picks, but hey, if you do and it works out, great. Basically, if it works out for me and we keep doing the show, then it's probably going to work out for you as well. But I'm just going to kind of run you through my process and basically what daily fantasy sports are. I mean, if a lot of you probably already know, but just from my Facebook, people are like, what is DFS? So it's daily fantasy sports on a daily basis, simply put. So instead of having your one team that you draft for fantasy football at the beginning of the year and you have that whole team the entire year, with daily fantasy sports, you can have as many teams as you want, so you can avoid injuries, and it's a blast. And there's so many different versions. So like tonight, first of all, happy opening NFL day. Woo, 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 woo. Man, I'm psyched. I'm so fired up. Bucks against the Cowboys. I think the Bucks are going to roll the Cowboys. I'm not a believer in the Cowboys, even with Zach Martin, and now he's out. So I think the Bucks roll this one. So for tonight, it's one game. So you can play a showdown. And I'll actually show you what a showdown is. So it's basically on DraftKings. That is my preferred daily fantasy site. You have some others, but I prefer DraftKings. And so with showdown, what you're going to do, you're going to get a captain. And they get 1.5 times points. And then you have to pick all your flex guys. So as you can see right here, you only get the guys from tonight's game. And right now I've got, my captain is Antonio Brown. I've got Brady, Prescott, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, and O.J. Howard. And there's so many strategies you can implement with Showdown. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm not a very good Showdown player. I'm just doing it really tonight just because it's the first game and I want some action in this bad boy. So a lot of people, you can go cheap at captain and then load up your rosters. Or if you think like Brady's going to go off, he is, you can't see it here because I've already rostered him. But Brady, if I take him out, you can see is the most expensive guy on the slate. So if you utilize him at captain, you really have to have some dart throws at your other positions. And my team right now, by the looks of it, I've got Antonio Brown. He's my captain. He was kind of like middly priced. So I'm able to fit in Brady, Prescott. I'm from Arizona, so I say Prescott, but it's actually Dak Prescott. Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, and then throwing a little O.J. Howard because he's back. And all he really needs is a touchdown. He's at 2,200 points. So that's another thing with daily fantasy. You really have to find the value. You have to find these guys that can bring, with football, you typically want like 3 times what their cost is. So with O.J. Howard, he's 2,200. So you want 66, you want at least 6.6 points out of it, which isn't really asking a lot. So that could be a touchdown, a couple passes, a couple receptions, and some yards. So you could have 3 receptions and 30 yards, and boom, there you go. You found that price for him. So that's showdown. But I'm not a huge showdown guy. I'm just doing it once again tonight. But as we had talked about, my strategy, I don't have a big bank. I'm starting out with $500, okay? So this show could be so short. Well, it'll at least be 5 weeks probably, because I think I'm going to try to cap myself at around $100 a week, depending on how I do. So for this week, I'm at $100. Actually, excuse me, I'm at $105 because there is a cash game that I've been doing the past couple of years that I totally forgot about. So I'm at $105. And with that, I'm going to show you once again all my contests. So some of these contests are free contests. That's the thing with DraftKings. A lot of times they have these free contests, and it's like, why not get in them just in case? I mean, you're up against so many people, but hey, you might hit it. So a lot of these sponsors have free contests, but I am focusing on the Millie Makers for $5. I've got 10 of those, and then I've got the $150. So I have created a couple lineups just to showcase my train of thought, my kind of strategy with these Millie Makers. But these teams will probably change since it's only Thursday. But I wanted to get this video out. One, because it's opening day of football, and on the weekends, it just gets crazy. And that's what I'm really going to be doing a ton of research. So it's kind of hard to fit a video in. But so here's my strategy. Basically, the first thing I'll look at, obviously I look at the games. Duh. Look at the games, see which ones I like to see good offenses. I like to see who's playing the shittiest defenses out there. Who's playing the Lions, who's playing the Falcons, who's playing the Eagles, who's playing Houston or Jacksonville. The Jets. So I look at that first. Then I go to DraftKings Sportsbook and I look at the over-unders. And you want to be involved in the heaviest over games of the weekend. So with that being said, this week, some of the biggest overs are over KC and Cleveland. Let's see, Arizona and Tennessee. And so those are the games that I'm really going after. But I'm really focusing on that Tennessee-Arizona game. Because KC and Cleveland, I just have to figure that one out. I think it could be high scoring, but it could also be really low scoring. I don't know. That one, this is the thing. It's Thursday, so I've got a lot to do yet. But for right now, I'm focusing on that Arizona-Tennessee game. Another game I'm focusing on, actually, I think is a sneaky over game, and it's Houston against Jacksonville. Two horrible defenses, two just horrible teams, but I think they can do enough on offense to give you a little something for it to go over. I just don't know who on Houston I would want to play other than maybe Brandon Cooks. But right now, let's go with the two lineups I've created. So these are focusing on Arizona and Tennessee. So there's two ways you can kind of go about this, in my personal opinion. You started with your quarterback. You want to do stacks. A lot of times in these GPPs, which those are the big, huge contests, you want to stack your team. So whether you have 2, 3, or 4 guys, I typically like to do 3. So in this case, I've got Ryan Tannehill for Tennessee, quarterback, stacked with Julio Jones, and then I'm bringing it back with DeAndre Hopkins from Arizona. So that's kind of what you want to do. You want to have like 2 or 3 guys from one team and then 1 or 2 guys from the other team, because you need to bring it back, because if it's going to be a shootout, you want to have somebody from the other team. And then that's the thing. The trick is finding the perfect guy. So in this case, I could always run it back. I mean, I could have Tannehill and A.J. Brown and run it back with like Chase Edmonds, or get a little even crazier and have like chase it back with Rondale Moore. But for those of you who are fairly new to this, I don't want to get too crazy on you. So I have Tannehill with Julio Jones, running it back with DeAndre Hopkins. So there I am with that game. That's kind of my stack. And it could be a chalky stack, and that's fine, because you can get different in so many areas. But having a guy like Tannehill, who's kind of a mid-price quarterback, I can get a CMC, Christian McCaffrey. I can get a Raheem Mostert, who is probably going to go off against the Lions. So I've got 2 quality running backs. I have Hopkins, I have Julio. And then go into my little sneaky game, Jacksonville-Houston, I've got Marvin Jones. I mean, that guy, that's a total punt right there. You don't know who Trevor Lawrence is going to go to with the Jaguars. I mean, everybody's on Chenault. That's the chalkiest guy I've ever seen, probably. Not ever seen, but he's huge chalk this week. And then you have DJ Shark, who could be huge. One of these guys is going to go nuts. So you just have to find out which one. Marvin Jones was the cheapest, so I was able to fit him into this lineup. Then I've got Jonnu Smith, who I am heavily on this year. And I love my Miami Dolphins, but they're not very good against the tight ends. And I think Mac Jones, being a rookie against a very, very good secondary, is going to have to dump it off a lot. He's going to have to look over the middle to the tight ends, and I'm just going to go with Jonnu Smith there. And then I've got Marquise Callaway in my flex because he's just super cheap, and he's, I think, the one. I mean, it's either he or Traquan Smith are the one in New Orleans, and they're going to be chucking it a ton. So to get a guy like him in week 1 for this cheap, got to do it. And then I went Bills defense against Pittsburgh. Big Ben, I don't know. He's always good for a couple picks. So in general, my strategy that I typically employ in football in these big tournaments, I typically go cheap at quarterback. I typically go very cheap at tight end, and I always go very cheap at defense. For this particular week, as of right now, and I'm going to have multiple lineups, but with having those multiple lineups, you kind of have to come up with a core group as well. So I'm thinking my core will consist of like Tannehill and then Kyler Murray for the Cardinals. And then I also like Jalen Hurts a ton. So those would probably be the 3 quarterbacks that I'm looking at, because Tannehill and Murray are associated with that Arizona-Tennessee game, which I think there's going to be a lot of points. And then you just kind of have to mismatch from there. But I typically go cheap with quarterbacks, tight ends, because tight end has, well, at least last year. I mean, it's a new year, so we'll see what happens. But last year was a mess at tight end. So you just kind of typically played Kelsey or punted at tight end. This time I'm kind of going middle of the grounds. And then I liked the Falcons too at defense, but right now I've got the Bills. So once again, this could change, but this is my current lineup for this scenario. Now, if I go to the other end of the Arizona-Tennessee game, you've got yourself Kyler Murray on the other side of the ball. So I'm starting my team out with him. So my stack here now is Kyler Murray running it with DeAndre Hopkins and then running it back with Derrick Henry. So that to me is a very, very solid stack, but it's also expensive. So you have to get a little, you got to make some things happen in your other positions. But I still have James Robinson now going back to that Jacksonville-Houston game. I think he is a great value at 6,400 in that game. Michael Pittman against Seattle's D. They're going to be throwing it a lot. I think that one's kind of a sneaky over game as well. Michael Pittman's probably going to be the one, at least for week 1. And then Jalen Waddle, that guy could go off or he could really do nothing. But Stephon Gilmore's out for the Patriots. Their other stud is probably going to be on Devontae Parker. So Waddle has an opportunity to have a pretty big game, though he is a rookie and it's his first game. So that scares me as well. Hooper, this is a guy that totally killed us in the playoffs. Sorry, my other camera started dying there. This guy killed us in the playoffs because KC is definitely a team you like to target against with tight ends. So we're going to go back to Hooper here and see if he brings it back. But once again, I usually go cheap at tight end, but the punt play tight ends, there's just guys that I don't know. It's super scary down there. Other than maybe Croft. He's somebody to potentially look at. But once again, it's Thursday, so there's a lot of work to do, but this is my initial thoughts. And then Mike Davis and Philly Atlanta, I think that's going to be a high-scoring game. 2 bad defenses, 2 potentially very potent offenses. So that should be a fun one. And then the Colts D. So I think Seattle's going to be throwing a lot, even though it is against Russell Wilson. The Colts are cheap. They're actually a very good defense. And all they need to do is a couple picks, maybe a sack, and then you hope for a little pick six, but you can't really count on it. So those are the 2 different versions of that one particular game that I'm focusing on. So that's kind of my plan. But typically, as I said, I go cheap at quarterback. Obviously, Kyler Murray, I believe he is the 2nd most expensive quarterback on the slate. So definitely going off of what I typically do. But I just think that game's going to go nuts. And Kyler Murray is going to be at the helm of a lot of those points. And then, of course, if you're going to go with Kyler Murray, you pretty much have to go with DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, it's just, and against Tennessee, too, it's crazy. So, and then bringing it back with Derrick Henry. I mean, everybody's going to be on Tannehill like I am in that other lineup, but it's still the Derrick Henry show. And Arizona has not showed us how to stop the run. So I love this stack. I just kind of have to figure out the pieces in the middle. But I'm pretty confident Murray, Henry, Robinson, Hopkins, I'm hardcore keeping that. And then I'm still very interested in Pittman, Waddle, Hooper, Mike Davis, and maybe the Colts. I got to figure that out. But so that's my strategy. Those are my thoughts. A lot of times you can even go uber cheap at quarterback. Like, let's just check this out. I mean, Sam Darnold, Jimmy Garoppolo could actually be pretty scary. I mean, I think they're going to run a ton, but Garoppolo might get a couple touchdowns in there. Who knows? And at 5,500, super, super cheap. Jameis Winston could be cheap. I mean, he throws a lot of picks, but he's probably going to throw a lot of touchdowns too. And then Sam Darnold, that's kind of a tricky one as well. You know, a little revenge game against the Jets. The Jets are terrible. So who knows? That could be a fun one. Because remember, he's dumping it off to Christian McCaffrey, and McCaffrey scoring. That's still a touchdown pass. Sam Darnold. I'm going to have to make a Sam Darnold lineup. I think that's a must. So, anyway, folks, there it is. That's my strategy. This is how we are beginning. This is the start. So, good luck to all of you in week one. Good luck to me. I'm in $105 deep for week one. 12 total paying contests along with a bunch of the free ones. So, when we come back next week, I'll either be super happy or super sad, but either way, we'll be moving on to week two. Thank you all so much for coming out. Journey begins officially this week. It's exciting and terrifying. Let's go Dolphins. Make some money, folks. Have some fun. Take care.